On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, Kent Hughes says they might overpay, and as a reminder, none of the money and draft picks belong to you.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1268 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports the show and ensures you don't miss an episode on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, and we are here every day for you, free and available wherever you get your shows. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as Ian, and I'm joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba. Laura, the general managers are down in Florida. I find it funny that they finish up all their work, and then they all go on vacation together, and they pretend to work so they can write it off on their taxes or whatever. By the way, do your taxes if you haven't already. This is your reminder from your friends here at Locked On Canadiens that they're due in a month, so just go do them now. Laura, when you watch these guys go on their general manager meetings, do you actually think they're going down there to work, or are they just going to hang out?
They're going to Florida is what they're doing, which
exactly.
I feel like, here's the thing though. I feel like they should find a way to make it another cool and sunny location. Like if I were a general manager, I'd be like, why aren't we going to Cayman? You know, why aren't we going to Turks and Caicos? Why aren't we doing like, yeah, this is what I would do. But I think it's really funny that they get together for like 2 hours, debate some rules that they might want to implement, agree they're all like, great, and then they like leave.
Yeah, they add one new terrible wrinkle to the coaches challenge, and they go, that's it for today, and they just take off for the beach, or probably the golf course more realistically. So we'll talk about that. Ken Hughes had some interesting things to say. Eric Engels brought those quotes to us in an article on Sportsnet, so we'll start there. We do have to break down what is now the second fight at practice for the Montreal Canadiens. So we'll kind of talk about the environment that's built in those practices and why this might keep happening. And then, of course, it's our weekly forecast. 3 must-win games on the calendar for the Montreal Canadiens this week. Every week from here on out is the most important week of the season, and that's just how it's going to be. The weekly forecast will go get you guys set up for the week ahead. But let's start down in sunny Florida with Kent Hughes meeting with Eric Engels to talk about where things are at with his hockey team. I found one thing interesting off the bat was regarding their trade deadline. I almost said policy, but their trade deadline inaction decisions. Kent Hughes had said, if there had been somebody for us that we could get to play in the lineup and help, somebody who could have played with Newhook and Patrik Laine, that's what we were testing the waters for. But to bring in somebody down the lineup when Marty really liked the composition of his lines and wasn't going to change them, we have just been bringing in injury depth, and the cost of injury depth was significant. But that proves what we've kind of all been thinking, in that Montreal is looking for a second line center because they were looking for someone to play in between Newhook and Patrik Laine. Your thoughts on that? I mean, it's sort of, we kind of know, but where are you at seeing him come out and just essentially say, yeah, we're looking?
Yeah, I think, to me, it kind of confirms that they're not afraid to walk away from, or not necessarily walk away. Maybe there's a different plan in mind for Kirby Dach, but, that was a big swing for the fences. And it didn't work out, not because it was a bad idea. It just didn't work out because the particular player just happened to have a run of bad luck with injuries, right? And it's not someone that they necessarily feel is enough. It's not enough depth. I don't think that they're saying he's a bad player. I think they're just saying, like, we can't have all our eggs in the Kirby Dach basket. Now, whether they trade him away or come up with something else for him to do is still up, is still up in the air. But it looks like they're having a very honest conversation with themselves and really taking accountability and responsibility. Like, I really like that part.
Yeah, I agree. I think the issue for me here isn't so much immediately replacing Kirby Dach. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he'll be a Montreal Canadian next year because, I mean, could his value be any lower? There's no point in moving off of him. He'll come in, maybe play a third line role, and maybe he still develops into that second line guy. But the Canadiens at this point have lost the luxury in sitting back and hoping that he hits that. because it's less likely that it happens. It could still happen, but they need to protect how this team looks moving forward more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think to me it's they're not willing to rest on uncertainty.
Yes,
Right? Like
exactly.
that's the big part. Uncertainty is the thing that they're trying to avoid.
Yeah. No, definitely, and I think they're set up well to handle that. And the next part of this, which I think this is the quote that took a lot of people, I don't want to say off guard, but it certainly made people laugh. I saw Habs Reddit having a good time with this one. When asked about going into free agency and trying to acquire top six talent, Ken Hughes said, "We're not going into free agency like a bunch of drunken sailors and get stuck with 8-year deals that we wish we could get out of the minute we get into them. But I think we're probably closer to overpaying in terms of what we give up in assets to acquire a player." First of all, Laura, if I can be so indulged, I would like to take a victory lap on the back end of that quote. So,
Do you know what's really funny is that at the moment he was telling Eric Engels that or whatever, I think that was an Engels interview,
yep,
right? At the moment that he was doing that, you were saying that very thing on the show, like right
yeah.
at that moment.
I started the episode with it today, and I think it'll be my general reminder as we enter into big rumor roundup, and I break out the hats again at the end of this season. But the prices are going to be expensive, and Kent Hughes isn't afraid to pay them if it's a player that's going to make a difference on
Yes.
this hockey team. If it's an impact top six player, he's going to fire prospects and draft picks out of a cannon to get those guys in, because I think that the environment at the Bell Center has accelerated this to a certain
Yes.
degree, in that now fans aren't going to be okay going backwards or stagnating. Like, it's time to put this into overdrive a little bit and
Mhm.
push this core and add to this core and see what you get out of it. I really enjoyed that quote, because I think it confirmed a lot of what we think about this front office, that they're okay spending those assets because they've done such a good job collecting all of those assets. They're not just going to hoard them. They're not going to make picks with all of those picks. Like,
Right.
they're going to fire this stuff out of a cannon. Anything else further to that, Laura?
Well, that's the thing too, is that, like that's why you get so many picks. That's why you get so many prospects. You're not going to play all of them. They're not going to stay in your system forever. At some point, some of them become bargaining chips and some of them become assets you trade away. It's just the way it is. It's that the Canadians in the past haven't done a good enough job of stockpiling things like that, right? They gave up picks for rentals, and they picked players that barely made the Montreal roster. Forget about being somebody that other people were dying to trade for, right? So like this management team is acknowledging that there's going to be overpay, and I think all of us should be okay with that, and we shouldn't be listening to people who say that's an overpayment for Montreal, because if Montreal is getting the player that is going to push them over the edge, then that's what we should be focusing on. There's no such thing as an overpay if it's the right thing for your team and it makes them a Stanley Cup contender.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's what people have a really hard time with is, we see we see teams spend a lot of assets to get a top six or top line player. And we all kind of look at the prospects and picks as magic beans. And how could you give all that away? It could be this. But you could just have an elite player instead and say, if those all turn into something great for that team, awesome, it worked out for them. I'm hitching my wagon to this player. This player is going to make us better. The last thing I wanted to touch on from this was sort of the impact that Kent Hughes thinks Four Nations had on, I guess, hockey's vision of Montreal. He says the organization itself is the most storied franchise in NHL history, and most of the best hockey players in the world, or a lot of them, came through Montreal over the Four Nations and got to experience that type of atmosphere that's hard to equal. Montreal is also a great city to live in. It's cold, and we get that, but I don't think weather is going to deter a player from playing in the best environment. I think we're getting there in terms of showing the hockey world we have a great environment. This is a good young team on the rise. We need to be able to articulate where our next moves are when we're able to speak to the agents of players we may target, or ideally directly to players. It seems like he has a plan. There's a legit game plan in place for Kent Hughes in that front office to be very aggressive and start talking to agents and players come July 1st. But to your point, to his point, do you think that the Four Nations had this kind of impact in Montreal?
Well, before that, a lot of the players were saying we're the best place to play in is was Montreal, right? Like they interviewed all kinds of players from, Connor McDavid to Austin Matthews. I think it was a promo. I can't remember if it was on Amazon, Sportsnet, whatever, but it was a promo for something. And the players that get asked, they always say Montreal is the best place to play. So I think that was partly known. But I think just experiencing winning in Montreal, maybe that might be it too, is when the crowd is behind you, right? And I think that was one of the things that was a big difference. Like there were a couple of things where I was reading the quotes and I was wondering, I know we're getting into a little bit late into the segment, but I was wondering if they were shade. Like first of all, the 8 years locked and then regretting one. I was like, who's he shading on that one? And then the weather one, I was like, is he shading Buffalo too? Like, is everyone just beating up on Buffalo?
It's the palm trees quote with better PR. That's all that was, right? It was just palm trees, but better. He's playing the hits in Montreal. We love the palm trees quote a lot because it goes to show just how messed up things are in Buffalo and why you need to avoid becoming that sort of franchise. All right, we will leave the Kent Hughes and the rest of his drunken sailors in Florida, and we will head back to Brassard, where we saw Michael Pezzetta and Arber Xhekaj get into it in practice and wonder whether or not this is a terrible thing for the Montreal Canadiens. We'll get into that in just a minute. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility in connecting them with the top freelancing talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need a few extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale businesses efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. There's nothing like watching a basketball game live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers. The sounds in basketball are truly spectacular. All sports, cool. I could listen to basketball shoes squeak on the hardwood forever. Maybe you want to take in a basketball game, sit courtside like a celebrity, or maybe you want to take in one of these NHL playoff races in person. If that applies to you, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Laura and I just took in a Habs game in Buffalo, and yes, we went through Game Time to secure our tickets. Why would we do that? Well, I got to see the views from our seat, and I got to make sure that my friend and I got to see the best seats in the house to watch Montreal beat Buffalo. So I knew exactly what we were getting, and with the lowest price guarantee, I had peace of mind knowing I got the best deal for our seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, my friend, we are back. Once again, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We really appreciate it. I know we say it at the beginning and the end of the show, so let's throw it in the second segment as well. Thank you for listening. As always, we really appreciate it. I'm being extra friendly because there seems to be a lot of animosity in Montreal right now. I'm really kidding. We had a scuffle at practice between Michael Pezzetta and Arber Xhekaj. Laura, if you were to pick two players who would have a scuffle at practice, would it be any other two?
No,
I mean, maybe Gallagher.
Not. Gallagher's old now, and he's a dead.
Yeah, he's therapy day. Brendan Gallagher. Yeah, I'm not surprised that these two went at it. If you watch the clip, which I know it made the rounds on social media on Monday, Xhekaj and Pezzetta are in a battle, and Pezzetta comes down with a pretty stupid slash right onto Xhekaj's stick, a very hard slash. Xhekaj's upset about it. You can see he shoves him back. He tests the flex on the stick as they're coming back up the other way. And then he engages him again in the corner. And Pezzetta's sort of like, well, what did I do wrong? Come on, Mike, you know what you did wrong. There's another clip of them making up and laughing at center ice over all of this happening. What are your thoughts when you see something like that? Because I know it gets clicks. It's sensational. These guys are fighting. Ooh, fighting. But like, it's not what it seems, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's just think about it, right? You're at work and your coworker is being really annoying. Do you not want to
And
like
you fight them
throw
on
something?
spot.
Yeah, right? No, you want to throw something at them, right? Like I'll have like, whatever, an eraser or something. Definitely not a stapler that will injure them. But you sometimes you feel like doing that, but it's not socially or professionally acceptable to do that in a workplace setting unless your day job is hockey player,
Right.
right? So that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. Was like the coworker was annoying him, so he annoyed back. Like, and I think
Yeah.
it's very different because the thing is, like, if you saw them making up as well, and like I just feel like that's like any sibling relationship, right? Like even friends get annoyed with each other and start like teasing each other, making fun of each
Sure.
other, right? So for me, like I would be more nervous if you were getting weird stories from the media, like leaks about, whatever's going on in Vancouver. That's a big
Yeah.
one where like there's quotes and it's like every quote makes you think of like what's the hidden meaning behind that? Is that like a subtweet? Like, so that's not happening in Montreal. They're just having fun. And honestly, don't slash someone.
Yeah. I'd be really nervous if they were losing every game and it sort of bubbled up out of nowhere and it was just two guys fighting each other. But this one, and I teased the other one, it was Matheson and Xhekaj earlier this year, actually just a couple weeks ago, where
Yeah.
Xhekaj is battling with Matheson pretty hard in the corner, probably a little too hard for practice, but who am I to say? And Matheson gets up and just kind of like gives Arber Xhekaj a shot up high, and they're cool. They're fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's. I think this is sort of the practice environment that you want to see. You don't want to see this every drill, right? But for it to bubble up once or twice, especially ahead of Tuesday's game against Ottawa, where they're going to give it to you way worse, like they're almost preparing each other for what's about to happen.
Yeah.
That like they're going to be taking liberties out there as they should. It is a rivalry game that has a lot at stake, and we'll definitely talk about that in our weekly forecast. But I can't be bothered, right? Like this isn't. I think it was Rob Bortuzzo, who I think he was with the Blues at the time, was basically he got in a fight because he called out his teammates for not caring. That's where you have to have an issue, right?
Yeah.
These guys both care too much, and it boiled over into them shoving each other boy stuff, right? This is just
They're
guys
very
being dudes at
intense.
the other end of it too.
Yeah, and like guys being dudes, but also they're two very intense guys. You see them like that every night. They're a different level of intense than Nathan McKinnon. Their
Yeah.
intense is more violent. So I think it's fine. Honestly, I thought it was really funny and like you said, if they were losing and this was bubbling up, and for me, it's really the like if you're hearing vague references from the media, like that's when you want to be worried. And you know what? Like I think it's fine. And what I would do is honestly take out that aggression on Ottawa on Tuesday night because you know that they're going to be taking out their aggression on you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We're also at a point where those are the only stories to come out of practice because all the guys who are practicing they're all on the same lines all the time. Marty's not touching anything, right? So there's a bunch of media there, especially for this one. I mentioned it was at Broussard. It wasn't. It was at the Bell Center because it was picture day.
Yeah.
So they had full attendance at that practice. Um, Confirmed that Sam Montembeault will get the start on Tuesday. That's pretty much the only news we're going to get from practice from now until the end of the season, realistically, is either
Well,
A, or,
hopefully don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
yeah.
We don't want any injuries.
Yeah, but that's not what I mean. Like, we would know about that before practice, right? Like,
Yeah.
we would know that they're, no one's, I would caution against that.
Okay.
I do think though that it is funny that Marty's never going to touch these lines unless he absolutely has to. And it's funny is Kent Hughes knows that, and when we talked about it earlier,
We're not
he
going to
said
get Marty
basically
to
like,
play anyone else up there.
yeah, I could have gotten a bottom six forward. Maybe it cost me like a third or fourth round pick, but Marty's not going to play him, so why would I do that? I find that to be really funny. That might become an issue later on, but for right now, it's very funny, right? Like
Well,
we can sort of
that'll
laugh
be
at
an issue when they stop winning, right? When they stop winning, because as of today, they still have the best record after Four Nations. The Canadiens
Yep.
literally have the best record of the NHL after the Four Nations. So if they weren't winning, then yeah, Kent Hughes is going to call him into the office and be like, "You got to do something about that." But as long as they're winning, like Marty calls the shots.
Yeah. Yep. No question there. All right. We will leave that there. We're going to come back. Look, it's Tuesday. We have 3 games ahead of us. It's the weekly forecast, and every week is more important than the last. You're going to want to know exactly what's going on this week, and we'll get into that in just a minute.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, we are back. Weekly forecast time, Laura. And look, it starts with a game that shouldn't be on a Tuesday night. This should be a Saturday night, especially at the Bell Center, appointment television game between the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens. Ottawa is also on a tear right now. They came out of Four Nations. I know Montreal beat them in their first game back. However, that was really the only blemish. Ottawa's been playing really well since then. They are 36-25 and 5 for 77 points. They are currently in the first wild card. Montreal's beaten them both times they've played so far this season. A 4-1 win in the first week of the season, a 5-2 win immediately after the Four Nations face-off. Look, there's 2 games remaining between these 2 teams. And yes, Ottawa has a 6-point gap on Montreal in the second wild cards, or in the first wild card spot, I should say. But these are 4-point games. And if you win both of these games and maybe you don't give Ottawa any loser points, you're only 2 points back of the Senators for the first wildcard spot. How doable is that, first of all?
I have faith. I really do. I think the Canadiens have really turned it around against Ottawa in particular this season. And I know the first game after the 4 seasons, like Xhekaj wasn't playing, blah, 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 all of that. I know they have Dylan Cousins now, but he's still working it out. He's still, I think it's doable, and I think the Canadiens have what it takes. I don't think that they will take Ottawa lightly. I think in the past they might have as well, which is something that did contribute to, I don't know, I think it was like 20 games in a row that Ottawa won. I don't know, 13 games, whatever it is, in a row that Ottawa beat Montreal. I think for me, it's that they have to ensure that they never allow Ottawa control, because that's how they were able to beat the Panthers, and that's how they were able to beat, even Buffalo, like the 2 games.
That's how they beat Ottawa both times this year. Yeah. Ottawa never really got their feet set in either of those games. Montreal from the outset was the better team in both of those games. So I completely agree.
Not let up.
Yeah, you can't let them get set up. And look, the Bell Center is going to be rocking on Tuesday. I cannot wait to see that atmosphere. I think the Canadiens on Saturday, I think we talked about it too. They rose to the occasion of what the crowd was giving them. The crowd was so excited for that game. Man, it's going to be the same thing on Tuesday. And I know it's a Tuesday night, whatever. It's a school night sort of deal. But it's going to be loud.
It's still the Bell Center.
And it's still 2 teams that, as Arber Xhekaj pointed today, they are not each other's favorite teams. No. They do not like to play one another. And look, one thing I wanted to do was look back and see, when was the last time they played this meaningful of a game in March or onward? And what I found was in 2017, it was actually March 25th, 2017. Both the Canadiens and Senators were in playoff spots and ended up making the playoffs. Like that was it. They also played each other 3 times in a week at that point in the schedule, which is, you're asking for Armageddon.
I remember that now.
Habs took all 3, by the way. Just pointing that out. Montreal won all 3. Hold on to that, by the way, because that's where our trivia question is headed later. Look, I think there's going to be a lot of nastiness in this game. The key for me is get used to it. Yeah. You got to live in it. You got to live in, weather it, but also be the aggressor. Like I hope he starts the 4th line as he often has, Marty. Let them get in and set the tone early. Watch Emil Heineman drive somebody into the boards and get the Bell Center on their feet, and then send Boy Genius over the boards for a goal. That's the perfect start for this team. That's what we want to see them do. if they can pull that off against Ottawa and keep it riding for the remaining 58 minutes, look, I really like their chances. I like how they match up against this team. They've played them well all season. Any other keys to this one for you?
Don't get injured.
Yes, of course. I mean, that's the, mine is always the protect the puck. Don't get injured could also be the penciled in or etched in stone one that's there every single time this team hits the ice. All right.
But particularly against Ottawa.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look,
Or the baby
there's a chance this game develops into a street fight. That's always a chance between these two teams. And look, at this point, I think you just got to get used to it because this is what playoff games are going to be like. And this is going to be a real look at what the Canadiens can expect in the playoffs. So I can't remember last time I was this excited for a hockey game. I can't wait for them to lose like 9-0 though. All right. After that, they head on the road briefly to the island to play the New York Islanders, who are 30-28-8 for 68 points. The Canadiens have collected 3 of 4 points against the Islanders this year, a shootout loss in October, 4-3, which I was misfortunate enough to be at. Still had a great time. And a 2-1 overtime win for the Canadiens in November. I'm not really sure what the Islanders want to be, Laura. Like, what is this team? What when you think of the New York Islanders, what comes to mind?
I think that there's going to be some changes in the offseason. I don't think those changes are coming behind the bench. So I think, they had a resurgence, obviously, with coaching change, et cetera, and a trade. But I think that this game, it's really important for the Canadiens to win because the Islanders are not out of it yet. They're only 3 points back of the Montreal Canadiens. It's so crucial to put some distance between teams like this and the Islanders and the Montreal Canadiens. And so for me, it's like you have to pull out all the stops and you have to win. You have to remember that you are better than this team and like they're going to try and slow down the game, and you can't allow that to happen. You can't.
Yep. I will posit this. Matthew Barzal, Montreal Canadien. Your response?
I feel like we've had this conversation before. It might have been with a different co-host.
It might have been the other bearded guy with a backwards hat. Yeah, it might have been that guy.
That's the one. I think we were all for it at the time, but we didn't know what the price was going to be. But I am all for Matt Barzal being a Montreal Canadien. I don't think they're going to part with him, though.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Maybe they just decide it's time to turn over this core and start over. Look, the Islanders this year, I think they're a very average team with really bad special teams, and that's what's really hurting them. Their power play is one of the worst in the league, and their penalty kill is the second worst in the league. Their power play has 19 goals all year. To put that in perspective, Patrik Laine has 13. He only trails the New York Islanders by 6, and he's played half the season. So, that's hilarious. Yes, I think, look, I've said it a bunch. These are all must wins. That one against the Islanders, there's not a lot of games where you're in it against a team that's really close to you, but you are still looking down at them in the standings. You need to build that gap. Yeah. Keep building that cushion between, those guys, the Bruins of the world, the suddenly Columbus Blue Jackets of the world, which is shocking in and of itself. But we head back into the Bell Center on Saturday against the Colorado Avalanche, a very, very good hockey team, 41-24-3 for 85 points. However, the Canadiens won the only game that took place between these two teams back. I don't remember when. It was earlier. Oh, you know what it was? It was in January. It was on that trip.
Yeah, it was when they won when they won against the 4 last Stanley Cup champions.
Wild that the NHL scheduled that and the Canadiens laughed at it. 2-1 shootout win. The Avs goal came from Mikko Rantanen, so no one on the Avalanche has scored a goal against the Canadiens this year. So take that of what you will. Dobish made 22 saves on 23 shots. One of his very first games in the National Hockey League. He went from the Panthers to this, I believe. The dude just has ice in his veins. One of the coolest guys on this team, to be honest. Look, Nathan MacKinnon is insane. 103 points. He leads the league. If I was part of the Hockey Writers Association and I got a vote, he's my Hart Trophy winner in a walk. He's just that incredible of a player.
Yes, absolutely.
Blackwood looked sharp in net, 919, 217, and 2 shutouts. Makar, 78 points. Holy cow. The key for me, again, is going to be to feed off that Bell Center. I think the fans will rise to the occasion again. You can't let them down.
Mm-hmm. And Colorado's a popular team in Montreal, whether it's because there's a lot of Patrik Roy holdovers. A lot of people became they just followed the fandom with him. It's just a team that we all enjoy, obviously, because there was the Quebec rivalry too, but I don't think it was necessarily that as much as it is the Patrik Roy aspect of it. But Montreal fans love these Colorado games. I think it's going to be hard, but I wouldn't be surprised if they drop the game against the Islanders and then beat the
Yes.
Colorado Avalanche. Like that feels to me like a very Montreal Canadiens thing to do.
I think that's the most likely outcome, to be honest with you.
It is.
It's the funniest outcome by far, because I can just imagine how mad people would be Thursday night if they lose to the Islanders, and how hyped they would be on Saturday against the Avs.
If they beat the Avs.
Hilarious. 10 out of 10 no notes. 10 out of 10 yeehaws.
Yeehaws. My one note for the Canadiens is, in addition to not getting injured, protecting the puck, blah, 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 is throw some refined carbs at Nathan MacKinnon and see if that contains him.
Yeah, you're going to have to do something, man. You will not stop him. You can only hope to contain him. All right. Let's head into our trivia here and then head out for the day. Yesterday's question was, what do these three players have in common? Jan Boulis, Guy Lapointe, and Guy Carbonneau. Do you remember the answer, Laura?
The answer is that they are all obviously Montreal Canadiens or former Montreal Canadiens, and their birthday is today.
Yes, they all share a birthday, March 18th, which I point out because it is also my mom's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom. Thanks for putting up I pop up on her TikTok for some reason all the time. I don't know how that happens. So thanks for that, Mom. Appreciate you. All right. Today's question. I referenced that Ottawa game earlier, the Montreal-Ottawa game from 2017, the last meaningful game between these two teams. And I mentioned that because Andrei Markov had 3 points in that game, 2 goals, 1 assist in his last season as a Montreal Canadian. How many games did Markov score at least 3 points in his career? There's a bunch of them. How many games did Markov have at least 3 points in a single game? If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below. Email it to us. You guys know how to find us. We'll shout you out on the next episode of the show. But that's going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every day. We are your team every day here at Locked On. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You guys know how to find us. We're everywhere you can find social posts: TikTok, Instagram, Bluesky at Locked On Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com for the email. Send in your mailbag questions. As always, we get to the mailbag. We record it on Thursdays for Fridays. Send those in. We're already getting some. I keep seeing some pop up, so thank you for sending those in. We will be sure to get to them at the end of the week. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find my co-host Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow.